I'd never come across someone like him in my life. Honestly, I just went to the woods to clear my head. I didn't have any other reason. As a 61-year-old woman, I've learned to appreciate the value of peace and quiet. But instead of peace, I found something else. I saw him while walking down a narrow path. He was leaning against a tree, his face tilted slightly upwards, the sunlight making his skin shine like gold. For a moment, I just stood there, my heart about to stop. He looked to be in his 50s, maybe a little older, but how could someone be this manly, this damn attractive? He was huge, like he had the strength to take on everything in the world. His muscular arms, broad shoulders, and deep dark skin were flawless, like a work of art. Let me tell you about that day, the one that changed everything. And before I go on, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and watch this video till the end, cause this story is about to get pretty wild. When he looked at me, I could barely believe it was real. His eyes had this warm, deep quality, like he didn't just see me but could feel me. He smiled slightly, and his voice had this deep, resonant tone. Nice day, huh? I didn't know what to say, the words got stuck on my lips. Yeah, it really is, I finally managed to say. But there was something else bubbling inside me, this pull, this warmth pushing aside the voice in my head saying, hold on, step back, this might be dangerous. He took a few steps closer, and without even realizing it, I stepped back. I don't mean to freak you out, he said, his voice soft but confident as hell. No, it's fine, I stuttered, but my heart was pounding in my chest. He raised his hand and gently fixed a stray lock of hair the wind had messed up. That touch, it was brief, innocent even, but it sparked something in me. It was like something that had been asleep for years suddenly woke up. My name's Marcus, he said, his voice deep and warm, like a sound that resonated in my ears. I looked into his eyes and then remembered I had to say something. I'm Charlotte, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Charlotte, the way he said my name, like he was unlocking a secret, was almost too much. Nice name, it suits you. I felt my cheeks flush. After all these years, no one had ever made me feel this way with just a few words. Thanks, I said, smiling shyly. Do you come here often, he asked, hands in his pockets, but his body was fully facing me, not taking his eyes off me for a second. No, I said honestly, I don't really come here a lot. I just needed to clear my head. I think we're both looking for the same thing, he said, taking another step closer until he was almost right next to me. But what we found might be a little different. My breath hitched, his words felt like they were thickening the air around us. What do you think we found? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, shaky as hell. Marcus leaned in a little, his face coming closer to mine. Maybe something we didn't even know we needed, he said, his voice dropping. A whisper suddenly, he grabbed my hand, and with a gentle but firm move pressed my back against the tree. I was so shocked I couldn't move. All I could hear was the sound of my breath getting faster. His gaze shifted from my eyes to my lips, and then back to my eyes again. Charlotte, he said slowly, almost like he was warning me. If you don't want this, you better say it now. But the words had left me. Forget saying anything, at that moment it felt like all my logic was gone. I closed my eyes and tilted my head slightly, battling that familiar hesitation rising inside me. At that moment, Marcus seemed to take my hesitation as a kind of approval. His big hands cupped the sides of my face, and he kissed me. The kiss was both passionate and surprisingly gentle, like he was claiming me but also trying to understand me. His hand slid from my shoulders down to my back, and I could feel him enveloping me completely. My heart was racing so fast it felt like the whole world had stopped, and it was just Marcus and me left. Why are you doing this? I whispered breathlessly between kisses. Marcus paused, resting his forehead against mine. Because the moment I saw you, nothing else mattered. Those words shattered all the walls inside me. His hands, his touch, his voice, everything created this unreal sense of closeness. Is this real? I asked, still unsure but not pulling away. It's the most real thing that's ever happened to me, he said, looking deep into my eyes. The tension between us was growing, the pull was almost like a physical force. Despite that tiny bit of fear inside me, I couldn't stop wanting him. Marcus's hands slowly slid from my shoulders down my back, and I felt his fingers brushing against the fabric of my t-shirt. His touch was so light it felt like a breeze against my skin. "Being this close to you, Charlotte," he whispered, his voice deep and low, "I don't think I've ever felt anything this right." His words were as powerful as the warmth of his touch. Marcus's face was still so close to mine I could feel his breath on my forehead, like a warm touch against my skin. I parted my lips but no words came out. After a brief moment, his hands moved from my back, and I felt his fingers reach the edge of my t-shirt. I could feel him gently grip the fabric. My eyes met his for a second, then I noticed my breath getting even faster. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked, his voice so low it was practically a whisper. I shook my head. "No," I said, almost unsure of myself, but I knew I didn't want him to stop. When his fingers slid under the edge of my t-shirt, I felt the cool air mix with the warmth of my skin. His big, calloused hand slowly moved up my back, and I could feel my heart rate speeding up. I took a deep breath, but even the air filling my lungs wasn't enough. "Your skin, it's like telling a story," he said, his hand slowly moving from my back to my sides. When I felt the tip of his finger touch the lower part of my ribs, I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the tree. "Marcus," I murmured, unable to stop myself from getting lost in his arms. "I'm here," he responded, his voice so soft. I opened my eyes and caught his gaze again. "Just here for you." As his hands moved over my skin, I felt his warmth deep inside me. Every movement of his palms created a new vibration within me. For a moment, his hands rested on my waist and gently pulled me closer. Now his chest was almost fully pressed against mine. "Why do you affect me so much?" I said, struggling to find the right words. Marcus smiled, a dangerous charm in his eyes. "Maybe you're in the right place at the right time." I wanted to say something, but before I could, he moved faster and pressed his lips to my neck. I can't even describe the feeling of his warm, wet lips on my skin. I tilted my head back and took a deep breath. "You didn't have to be this beautiful," he said, his lips moving from my neck to my chin. "But when I saw you, I couldn't stop myself." In that moment, his hand started moving more decisively, sliding up from my waist. I felt his fingers move from my back to my shoulders under my t-shirt. Every touch made me feel his warmth even deeper on my skin. "Marcus, this is too fast," I said, but the moment the words left my lips, I realized it wasn't true. "Then let's slow down," he replied, pausing for a moment and bringing his face closer to mine. "But don't pull away." I raised my hands and touched his chest. When I felt his large, firm body under my hands, any resistance I had completely broke. My fingers moved involuntarily down his chest. "You." I started, but I couldn't finish the sentence. His lips found mine again, this time with more passion, more open than before. At that moment, I felt completely surrendered. The words were just whispers that strengthened the moment. Marcus' presence pulled me away from the real world and fully into the now. As his hand slid under my t-shirt, my heart raced with every touch. My eyes were locked on him, every nerve in my body responding to his touch. Being this close, I could feel his body heat, every muscle tense with energy. He paused for a moment, his hands on my waist, his eyes locked with mine. "I don't think you're against this," he said, his voice thick with confidence. Before I fully understood what was happening, Marcus lowered his head and pulled his t-shirt off over his head. His lower body became visible, and his muscular chest, strong shoulders, and powerful arms immediately caught my attention. He was so masculine and strong that I felt like my eyes almost went dark for a second. He threw his shirt to the ground, and as I watched every muscle on his body, I couldn't resist his determined, confident attitude. Yes, I wanted to be in this moment with every part of me. In that moment, Marcus leaned in, grabbing my waist and slowly pulling me toward him. The hardness of my back against the tree bark disappeared in an instant as I lay on the ground on top of his shirt. I could feel the weight. The thought of his body on mine, being with you feels more natural than anything. He whispered, his hands starting to explore my body. My heart was racing, my mind was foggy, and my feelings were becoming heavier. Even though I hesitated, my body instinctively reacted to him as my hand slid over Marcus's solid body. My palms followed the warmth of his skin, craving it. "Are we ready for this?" I asked, my voice low and shaky. But before waiting for an answer, my fingers settled on his muscular shoulders. "Just feel it," he said, bringing his lips close to mine. For a moment we both wanted this. His body, with every move, made me forget everything around us. As my hands moved to his waist, I lifted his back and pushed upward, a sense of determination in my eyes. For me, this moment wasn't about giving in, it felt like the right step. And then all the physical attraction and touches merged with the emotional intensity. The closeness between us combined with a deep emotional connection, making every movement more passionate. We had both reached the peak of excitement, and in an instant it exploded. Our bodies intertwined, our senses collided. In that moment, everything else vanished, it was just us. Our deep breaths mixed together as our hearts pounded fast, and every cell of our bodies felt that intense, indescribable pleasure. My breath was coming in quick waves, feeling Marcus's warm skin as my hands moved over his body. My body was still trembling, rising with every move I took. "Marcus," I whispered, my voice hoarse and shaky. I was so excited that the words couldn't come out right. My eyes half closed, my body pressing closer to him, feeling him from every angle. He was struggling to breathe too, his voice coming from deep inside. "Charlotte," he murmured, his hands on my waist, every muscle movement driving me wild. "I feel you everywhere." We were so close, so wrapped up in each other, the heat from our bodies mixing together. The power of his body, every movement was touching me, affecting me deeply. Our rapid breaths intensified the tension in the moment. I almost screamed, but I held back. After a while, we slowly pulled away from each other, but the distance between us was still connected by the touch of our hands. We lay side by side, our breaths still fast, our trembling bodies close, but this time more peaceful, more calm. As we looked at each other, our breaths mingled, our bodies still close, carrying each other's warmth. I looked up at the sky, it was vast and endless, but it was also peaceful, calm. In that moment, there was a sense of peace within me. The men beside me showed me that everything could be different, more special. Now we were closer, not just with our bodies but with our souls touching each other. Marcus looked up at the sky, taking a deep breath. Then slowly he said, "Sometimes you don't know exactly what life has to offer, but then all of a sudden, everything makes sense. You realize how weak we are, but also how strong we are." Words stirred something inside me as I looked at him. I smiled. Sometimes when you're living a moment, you think you didn't expect it, but that moment finds you, stays with you, and never leaves. I said, putting my feelings into words. We stayed silent for a while, but the silence felt like peace. It was like we were lost in the moment, with the sky and us becoming one. We kept looking at the sky, our breaths calming, growing closer, building a deeper bond. If you've made it this far, I'm sure you're hooked on the story. There's so much more to come, and you won't want to miss it. Hit that follow button and turn on notifications, so you're the first to dive into my next mysterious tale. Your support means the world to me.